A Century of Battles, Introduction to the 100 Years' War. The 100 Years' War was a series of conflicts waged from 1337 to 1453, a period that spanned over a century. This war was not a single continuous battle, but rather a series of intermittent conflicts and truces. The 100 Years' War was a long and brutal conflict. It involved numerous battles, sieges and skirmishes, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The war saw the evolution of military tactics and the introduction of new weapons such as the longbow, which played a crucial role in many battles. It lasted for over a century, from 1337 to 1453. This prolonged period of warfare had a profound impact on the societies, economies and politics of both England and France. The war also saw the rise and fall of several prominent figures and dynasties. England and France fought for control of land and power. The primary contention was over the French throne, with English kings laying claim to it based on their lineage. This struggle for dominance led to numerous battles and shifting alliances. This war changed both countries forever. The devastation wrought by the war led to significant social and economic changes. Villages were destroyed and the population suffered from famine and disease. The war also contributed to the decline of the feudal system and the rise of centralized monarchies. The war was about more than just land. It was a struggle for power, influence, and legitimacy. Both sides sought to assert their dominance and secure their place in history. The conflict also had a significant impact on the development of national identities in both England and France. It was about who would rule France. The English kings claimed they had a right to the French throne through their ancestry, while the French kings sought to defend their sovereignty and maintain control over their territories. The English kings claimed they had a right to the French throne. This claim was based on the fact that they were descendants of the French royal family. However, the French nobility and the general populace were determined to resist these claims and maintain their independence. The French kings naturally disagreed. They believed that the French crown should remain in French hands and were willing to fight to ensure that it did. This fundamental disagreement over the rightful ruler of France was the root cause of the prolonged conflict. This disagreement led to generations of fighting. The war saw numerous battles, each with its own heroes and tragedies. The conflict also saw the involvement of various European powers, each with their own interests and agendas. Armies clashed in huge battles. These battles were often brutal and bloody, with both sides suffering heavy losses. The war also saw the use of new military technologies and tactics, which changed the nature of warfare in Europe. Famous leaders emerged on both sides. Figures such as Joan of Arc and King Henry V became legendary for their roles in the conflict. Their actions and decisions had a lasting impact on the course of the war and the history of their respective nations. The 100 Years' War is a fascinating and important part of history. It shaped the future of both England and France and had a lasting impact on the development of Europe. Understanding this conflict helps us to better understand the complexities of medieval politics, warfare, and society. Of the fight for France, roots of a royal rivalry. To understand the war, we need to look back in time. The roots of this conflict stretch deep into the annals of history, intertwining the destinies of two powerful nations. William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy, became King of England in 1066. His victory at the Battle of Hastings not only changed the course of English history, but also sowed the seeds of future conflicts with France. This created a link between England and France. The English crown now had a vested interest in French territories, leading to a complex web of allegiances and rivalries. English kings now held land in France. These lands were not just any territories. They were significant and wealthy regions that added to the power and prestige of the English monarchy. They were also vassals to the French king, a confusing and ultimately explosive situation. This dual allegiance created a constant tension, as English kings were both rulers and subjects in the eyes of the French crown. Over time, the English kings gained more power in France. Through a series of strategic marriages, battles, and treaties, they expanded their influence and control over French lands. They controlled large areas of land. These territories were not just symbols of power, but also sources of immense wealth, further fueling the ambitions of the English monarchy. By the 14th century, the English king Edward III believed he had a strong claim to the French throne itself. His claim was based on his lineage, as he was the grandson of Philip IV of France through his mother, Isabella. However, the French nobility disagreed. They were determined to keep the French crown within their own control and were wary of English influence over their kingdom. They chose Philip VI as their king. Philip was a cousin of the previous king and represented a continuation of the French royal line, which the nobility hoped would maintain stability. Edward III refused to accept this. He saw Philip's coronation as a direct challenge to his own claim and a threat to his authority and ambitions. He declared war on France in 1337. This declaration was not just a political maneuver, but a call to arms that would ignite a century-long conflict. The 100 Years' War had begun. This epic struggle would see generations of soldiers, nobles, and commoners drawn into a brutal and transformative conflict that reshaped the destinies of both England and France. England's early victories, the Edwardian War. The first phase of the war is known as the Edwardian War. This period saw some stunning English victories. England's armies were smaller, but they were well trained and well equipped. They used longbows to devastating effect. The Battle of Crécy in 1346 was a major turning point. English archers decimated the French cavalry. This victory shocked France and all of Europe. England's success continued. They captured the important port of Calais in 1347. The Edwardian War ended with the Treaty of Bretigny in 1360. England gained significant territory. They seemed unbeatable. The war did not end there. After a period of truce, fighting broke out again in 1369. This phase is known as the Caroline War. It was named after Charles V, the French king. This time the French fought back with more success. They avoided large battles. Instead, they used guerrilla tactics to wear down the English. They also had a new weapon cannons. The Caroline War ended in 1396 with a truce. Both sides were exhausted. The war had taken its toll on both countries. The final phase of the war is known as the Lancastrian War, spanning from 1415 to 1453. This period marked some of the most intense and decisive battles of the 100 Years' War. A prolonged conflict between England and France that had already been raging for decades. It began when Henry V of England renewed the English claim to the French throne. Henry was a determined and ambitious ruler, eager to expand his influence and secure his legacy by conquering France. The English won a stunning victory at the Battle of Agincourt in 1415. This battle showcased the effectiveness of the English longbowmen and the tactical genius of Henry V, leading to a devastating defeat for the French forces. With this victory, it seemed like France might finally be defeated. The English forces continued to advance, capturing key territories and fortresses, and the morale of the French army was at an all-time low. But then a young peasant woman named Joan of Arc emerged. Born in Domremy, a small village in northeastern France, Joan was an unlikely hero who would change the course of history. Joan of Arc believed that God had chosen her to save France. She claimed to have received visions from saints instructing her to support Charles VII and help drive the English out of France. She inspired the French army with her faith and courage. Her presence and conviction revitalized the demoralized French troops, giving them a renewed sense of purpose and hope. She led them to victory at the Siege of Orléans in 1429. This crucial victory not only lifted the siege, but also marked the beginning of a series of French successes that would eventually turn the tide of the war. This was a turning point in the war. Joan's leadership and the victory at Orléans galvanized the French forces, leading to further victories and ultimately contributing to the eventual expulsion of the English from French territories. Joan of Arc was captured and executed by the English in 1431. However, her spirit lived on. The French continued to fight back. They were helped by the development of new cannons, which were very effective against castles. Slowly but surely, the French pushed the English back. They recaptured Paris in 1436. Finally, in 1453, the English were defeated at the Battle of Castillon. This marked the end of the 100 Years' War. The 100 Years' War had a profound impact on both England and France. It led to the development of national identities in both countries. The English language also began to develop its own unique character after the war. In France, the war led to the emergence of a strong monarchy. The king was able to consolidate his power and create a more centralized state. The Hundred Years' War was a defining period in European history. It marked the end of the medieval era and the beginning of the Renaissance.